Okay, so this is a series of shorter exercises covering a few things, and we're not going to be working with the double-page spread, 8-page magazine layout that you've been working with so far, because we aren't at that point where we can do some of these activities with that document. So we're going to open other documents specifically for demonstration of certain things. So the first thing we're going to look at is text frame options. So you're going to open Activity 331 and you're going to open text frame options. Okay, so here we've got a simple layout with one story or text frame on the right hand side and a sidebar on the left hand side, but it doesn't look nicely laid out yet. So the text is formatted okay, but the actual text frames haven't been nicely formatted. So we're going to do a few things to this. So we're going to select the text frame on the left hand side, that's the main one, and we're not going to switch to our type tool. That's the trick here with text frame options, is you don't want to be on your type tool, you need to be on your selection tool. Select the text frame and you're going to go to Object, Text Frame Options. The shortcut is Command or Control B. Okay, and I'm just going to move this to the side so we can see what we're doing and make sure that preview is on. So the first thing we're going to do is set this to 3 columns. So 3 columns, which looks better already. But then also we want to make some changes so that it kind of balances properly. So there's a checkbox here that says balance columns. So you see when I do that, it puts an equal amount of text in each column, even though the text frame is actually bigger. So that looks much nicer. Now what I want to do is I want to change the leading so that that's the space between lines so that it fills this area. But instead of me experimenting with leading, I'm just going to go here to vertical justification and change it to justify. And you can see now this text fits absolutely exactly into these 3 columns without any overset text. And if I continued to edit this text and add more text in, it'll continue to update so that it doesn't become overset, so that the leading is dynamic. Then we're going to set the paragraph spacing here so that we have a bit of space between each paragraph. So we're going to say 10 millimeters. Okay, so that looks a lot nicer. The spacing just gives it a bit more breathing room. And then we're going to say OK. Then we're going to take this text frame here, which is basically short, a bit short here, and also the overset text icon is here telling us there's more text that's not showing. So we're going to go to Object, Text Frame Options. I'm just going to move it to this side so I can see what I'm doing. And we want to, it's not a good idea with typography to have your text hitting the edge of a frame if the frame has a color. So we've got a gray frame here and the text is hitting the edge of the gray box. It doesn't look nice. It's basically a bit amateur. So we're going to take our inset spacing value and we're going to increase that to 3 millimeters. And you can see what it does is it just pushes the text a little bit away from the edge of that frame to give it a bit of breathing space. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to auto size and we're going to say we want the height to auto size. That just means that the box will expand to accommodate all the text. But you can see that it's expanded up and down, which is not what I want. So I'm going to click on this box here in this little proxy to say only down. So now this text frame will always expand to accommodate however much text is in there. Alright, and then I'm going to press OK. So we're going to come back to this document in another activity. So this is what we've done so far, and we're going to move on to the next one now. So you're going to leave this document open and we're going to work with a brand new document. So we're going to say File, New Document, Print, A4 millimeters, and we'll set the margins to 10 all around. Okay, and everything else is good to go, so we'll just create. So this exercise is looking at something called text wrapping, which is where your text will wrap around something else. So the first thing I want to do is show you a Photoshop document that I've supplied you with. The document is called main image, and it's a Photoshop document. So I just want to show you a few things here. First, I have deep etched this flower. In other words, I've selected the background and filled it with white so that the flower is a photo and the background is white. So I've created a high contrast area. So that's the one thing that's quite important for text wrapping. Then there's another way that you can approach this, which is through paths. So I have used the pen tool to create a path around the flower. So that's another way that you can do text wrapping, is by creating a path in your Photoshop document. And the third way, if I just click away from that, is actually with a selection. So if I go to select, load selection, you will see that I have a selection here called flower, and if I say OK, you can see that it's actually a selection of the flower shape. So those are three different things in this document that I can use to create text wrapping. So I'm just going to close this and go back to InDesign. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a text frame. So type and drag a text frame over the whole document, and we're just going to fill it with placeholder text because we're not focusing on the actual content of the text here, we're focusing on the image. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rectangle frame tool, and I'm going to create, I'm just going to click on the side here, create a rectangle 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters, and I'm going to pop it over there, and then I'm going to hold down Alt and drag a copy to the center of the page. There's the center line. I'm using my smart guides here to help me, and another one over there. And I'm going to fill them with three images. So without selecting anything, Command or Control D, and there's three images that I've supplied here, 1, 2, 3, and I'm just going to click on each one of these frames to load that image. Okay, I'm not even going to fit the images, let's just say that's exactly what I want. So if I want text wrapping to happen here, I can do it one at a time, but because each one of them is going to have the same settings, I'm just going to select all three of these boxes. And up here on my control panel, I have some text wrapping options here. So the first one is no text wrapping, and then we have wraparound bounding box, wraparound object shape, and so on. So I'm just going to bring up my text wrap settings by holding down Option on the Mac or Alt on Windows and clicking on any one of those text wrap buttons, and it brings up my text wrap options. So in this case, we can actually just use wraparound bounding box, and you can see the text is now wrapping around those boxes, but it's wrapping too close. So I want to change that. So I'm going to change, I don't want to change the right hand side because that's right up against the margin. So the top and we'll start with the left. Let's change the left wrap to 5 millimeters, and then let's follow suit with the other top and bottom. Okay, so now we've got nice text wrapping going on there, and this is dynamic, which means if I move this box somewhere else, it continues to wrap according to those settings. Okay, so that's a pretty basic text wrapping. But also remember that text wrapping can happen on anything, not just a picture. So if I take my type tool and create a text box, and I put in, let's say, a pull quote, so I'll just say, I love it. Okay, you're going to learn how to create and control text in the next learning unit. So if I just make this really nice big pull quote, probably a little bit too big. Okay, and let's just make this text frame. So if I take that let's say that's a pull quote, and I pop it over here, I can put text wrapping on that. So let's say bounding box, And let's link these together, and let's just push the text a little bit further away. Okay, so now I've got text wrapping around that text there. So then the last one is slightly more complex. So I'm going to take my rectangle frame tool and I'm going to draw a frame across the whole page, and then Command or Control D, and we're going to place that main image, and I'm going to select it, right click, fitting, fill frame proportionally. Then I'm going to click on the content grabber in the middle, and I'm just going to use Shift and my left arrow to move the image inside the frame so that it's on the edge of the page like that. Then I'm going to take my selection tool and arrange this. So right click, arrange, send to back. Alright, so now we've got this image, and we want to text wrap it. So this gets a bit interesting, because if I select that image frame, or that frame, and I choose wrap around bounding box, all the text disappears because we've chased the text away from this box, and so it's basically been wrapped off of its own box and become overset. So that's no good. So we're going to go to the next option, which is wrap around object shape. And now we need to change some settings. So once it's done some thinking, and this little thing that comes up, just say OK. And now you can see it's actually trying to wrap itself around the deep etched shape here. So I'm going to change a few settings. I'm going to say only wrap on the right hand side, and I'm going to, instead of select subject, I'm going to say detect edges. And now I'm going to offset it a bit, push it out, and you can see that it's actually detecting the edge of the shape and it's pushing the text out. Now the problem here is, can you see that pull quote, I love it, the text is still overset because it's being wrapped, which is not what I want. So for this particular frame, I'm going to go to Object, Text Frame Options, and right at the bottom here is an option that says Ignore Text Wrap. I'm going to choose that and say OK. So now that is no longer respecting the text wrap of that image. Alright, so getting back to this image, that's using detect edges, but we have some other options here, because remember in the Photoshop document we've got a path and we've got a selection. So let's change it to alpha channel. So alpha channel is just another word for a saved selection in a Photoshop document, and remember that selection was called flower. So now it's using that selection with an offset value to wrap the text. And then we also have Photoshop path, and now it's using that path, which is a much wider selection. Let's just bring this in a bit so that it's exactly on that path. So I think that's actually the best option. It looks much smoother. So you can see the text wrapping is actually pretty powerful in InDesign, and you have a lot of control over exactly how everything wraps. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and see you next time.